I don't even know how to start this video. I'm not gonna lie. And never in a million years would I have expected that a Lego company or a Lego scandal would expose the corruption in Utah with its law enforcement. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, essentially, there's this YouTube creator by the name of Reckless Ben, and SitRep, he and someone else, or another person for that matter, had inherited his father's Lego collection, or there's a Lego collection that was worth at least around $200,000, and so he wanted to sell that collection to help pay for medical expenses for his father, who was going through a lot, and so he decided to sell the collection. He went through a store called Bricks and Minifigs to do that, and so he talked with the CEO owner, or if it wasn't the CEO owner, he went in there to talk with them, and unfortunately, they never, paid him for the Legos that he sold them. And in fact, what the deal was that it would be a consignment or whatever the wording is specifically, but he wanted to give that to the store, and then the store would equally pay him for it. And so you think that's good, like it shouldn't be any more than that. Everything should be going smooth, just pay him the money that you're gonna get all these Legos, so let's pay the money for what they gave us, because it's not like we're just buying it to buy it. Like, we're gonna turn around and sell it, and they've been doing it. They turned around those Legos and the stuff that he gave them, and they put it on Marketplace where they could be sold. The problem is they never paid him. Yeah, over $200,000. Just they never pay him, and so if it goes down to, or it was, the matter comes down to CEO ownership change, meaning that the old CEO was super down with consignments, and he wanted to, he just didn't mind it, because it was a good way to make money in a term or whatever. And so I don't say good way to make money, but it was just like, why not? They could probably upsell a little bit, make some money, especially over $200,000. So it seemed like a good consignment deal, right? Unfortunately, the new CEO owner that took over this place did not like that at all. In fact, he was super against it, to the point where he just told the family and so to fuck off. And so essentially, this Reckless Ben YouTuber, he's been trying to do basically an investigative process, kind of like that other guy who figured out the luring center ordeal, except now this is with Legos. And it's so unironic that the YouTuber who was trying to expose fraud with the hospices and with the luring centers, because they're funneling millions of dollars with presumably no children at any of these daycares, the Lego Bricks and Minifig scandal is actually exposing more than a whole hospice situation, which is so crazy to me. Lego are exposing heavy, I don't even know the word, fraud? I don't know. Anyway, or corruption for that matter. It's exposing heavy corruption, because not only did this company take all these Legos and not pay back or pay this guy for what would presumably be a legal binding process, held off on giving him the money, and in fact is trying everything in his power to not pay them. So after ownership changes, the corporation intervened involving the franchise. Manziel claims a large portion of the collection was never returned, and that money was still owed. Bricks and Minifigs disputes responsibility, arguing the consignment deal was allegedly made by a former franchise operator without corporate authorization, and therefore was not corporate agreement. Although in their whole ordeal process, they say that, in their CEO, they say that, consignments are okay. They can do consignments. So they lie on top of that. And so he started investigating through this publicly through YouTube, exposing all of it through YouTube. He's tried pretty much every avenue process to try to get the Legos back. He's tried to do it in good faith, and so a little bit ago they took him to court and they won the lawsuit. And so it was like, hooray, the good guys won. We beat them, and this family can get their money and they can pay for these medical expenses, and the world can just go round. And you'd think that would be the best move, considering how far bad and how far in this goes, to where it exposes more than what they could have probably just done right by in the beginning. So after they won the lawsuit, the problem was that the only way to pay them out or for the Bricks and Minifigs people to pay them was to, I don't know the whole process. I'm just gonna say they still haven't paid them. They still didn't pay them even after winning the lawsuit. So then they try to figure, okay, well, let's just do this civilly. Let's just do a civil lawsuit and go through small claims court, which even though it's over $200,000, let's just do it through there because we can't sue them over this avenue. So let's just do a personal civil lawsuit. And unfortunately, the cops and every surrounding person near these two folk are doing everything in their power to make sure that they didn't pursue it legally or through any avenue they can to make sure that he wasn't interacted with. And I'm talking about the CEO, the new CEO. And so Reckless Ben uploaded a video earlier today talking about, or I think it was earlier today. I think it was like a couple hours ago. And I was watching it and I was so profoundly, like I was so jaw dropped watching the video. I had to make a video as soon as possible. Maybe to like a couple hundred people are gonna see this. It's not gonna be a lot, but I thought it was super fucking crazy because this video just basically exposes the huge corruption in Utah with law enforcement. I mean, going back, when Reckless Ben had to file or actually go through with having a court case submitted and actually verified through a judge and whatnot, he had to interact with or have a good faith talk with the CEOs and the people involved with the situation. And anytime he tried to, they just called the cops on him and they did everything they can to not interact with or to have Reckless Ben arrested. It was so many different instances. He tried, and Reckless Ben, I mean, good props to him, but I'm surprised that he's handling himself this well. Like how abruptly corrupt law enforcement in Utah is really acting. They are really just showing how corrupt they are, and I'll get into it a little bit further, but Reckless Ben tries so many different avenues to try to interact with how can we get this going, and so the only avenue is by just serving them papers. He tries serving them papers by just giving it to him, by having him come out and see that like there's like this custom sign saying that he stole like this family's life savings. And they tried every avenue, including a one of those people that are like a processor, a server processor, someone that just is more legally obligated or has the more credentials to be able to serve papers instead of it just being they're just related. They just know each other and they're just gonna have someone else do it. He tried everything in his power to do it by the law, by the book, and by the letter. The CEOs were not having it, and in fact, the police were not having it. In fact, the police tried everything they can to subdue him from even interacting with him by trying to put blame on him. They even accused him, or not accused him, they even pulled him over and did a 3-hour search on him for an anonymous tip of him having heroin on him. What? And then apparently it was like an anonymous tape. I don't know what who called in and said it was, but that was a falsified claim and statement. He just made a false accusation of Reckless Ben and his crew by having drugs on them, which resulted in a 3-hour search which led nowhere. And in fact, the cops were agitated and tried everything they can to push them to make a false report or a false confession. It didn't work. They weren't budging. They were adamant that what they were doing was by the law and they were doing everything right through any avenue to be able to do this without getting in trouble, without stepping in muddying waters. And they're right. They did. They did everything by the law. They went further and beyond what they should have to make sure this was done in good faith. And the cops were unfortunately helping the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs. The cops kept being called out anytime that Reckless Ben were to do something, to try to do something, to set something up. Coincidentally, the cops were always there. The cops always kept getting called out, and they kept repeatedly coming out to assess the situation or to deal with the situation. There's many different officers, which I'm not going to name, but I will go into a little bit later about their affiliation. And they just kept pushing that, Reckless Ben is doing something. He must be doing something illegal, and that we have to figure what this is so that way our Lord and Savior, the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs, doesn't get in trouble. And so they kept doing that. They kept trying to get him to pretty much piss off. They kept trying to push him with accusations of him having heroin on him and anything above the sun to try to figure out how can we get rid of this little shit stain. It didn't work. It really didn't. So the only thing they could have done was just arrest him. And so they arrested him. They even when he had the screen processor and he had documents, the papers ready to serve him. It was funny because one cop went up to give him the papers and he said he didn't want the papers. So he just handed the papers back. Buddy, that's not how serving papers work. Once they acknowledge that there are papers, he has to legally have them. The cop literally could have just put it on his patio floor in front of his front door and that would have been legally fine. He is supposed to take those documents once he's acknowledged that not only that's the person that it's talking about, but once he sees and he's interacting with the officer who has the papers, he is legally obligated to have those papers. The officer could have just placed the papers down and that would have been legally fine. What he in fact did was like, oh, he just didn't want it. Oh, what are we gonna do? Oh, fuck. He said no. Oh, fuck. Well, game over. And just handed the papers back. What the fuck? Even the cops were like, we do things differently here in Utah. Yeah, I bet. You guys really do love corruption. And you guys do it a little bit more differently and a little bit more abrupt in Utah. And so, not only that, the second time an officer came up, and this is more like the 10th plus time that an officer has come out and been called out and has interacted with Reckless Ben at this point. But the second time an officer was going to interact with him about those papers, he said, can I see those papers? Just grabs it from him after he hands it to him and just walks off. Says nothing. I mean, these are complete douchebag cops, but, they don't like to try to have any save face situation or moment to be like, can I see those papers real quick? What is this about? He just took it from him. And he just goes back into his police car to be like, is this real? Are they lying to me? Hey, guys, is this a real court case? And so eventually they were like, no, yeah, this is a real small claims court claims. This is a real case. They're not lying to you. And so the officer just inevitably just goes, and I might be mixing the details in, but he just basically goes in and just goes back to tell him like, yeah, I've never seen those papers before. I don't know what that is. That looks fake to me. You're a piece of shit for even trying to bring these papers to me. There's no judge name on any of it. There's not this or that. Yeah, buddy, there's no judge name on it because he's not able to pursue this court case to a judge unless he has papers served or he's talked to them in good faith. So of course it's not going to tie to any judge yet because he's trying to make those steps to get to there. And so the cops are blatantly corrupt, and it's not even like I'm going to accuse them of it. They just are. And so biggest theory is that these cops and most of the cops surrounding this case are actually involved with the Mormon church, that the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs are also involved with the church, the Mormon church. And so the biggest theory right now, and it's going to be probably the leading suspect, the leading theory is that all these cops are part of the same church. They're part of the Mormon church, and that the Bricks and Minifigs actually does donate and make sums to, I think, the police station, or if it's vice versa. I know there's like some details in there. I don't want to get too muddy, but it's a clear show that they're in it together. They're all they've looked up the officers involved in the case and the people that's interacted with Reckless Ben, and they saw that most of these cops have graduated or are part of the Mormon church. And so, of course, if you don't know, Mormons really do have each other's back. It's like a fucking clan over there. And so they clearly have each other's back to a degree, and they're obviously corrupt, and so they're trying to do what they can to biasly help the Bricks and CEO of Bricks and Minifigs to help him. I don't know, maybe because they're obviously part of the same church and then they make some donations. So it would, in effect, hinder and affect the police station, I think, to a degree. Either that or it would just hurt their church. And so it's literally the most clear, abrupt show of corruption in law enforcement I've ever seen. In fact, when Reckless Ben was looking over the footage, especially from body cam footage, and saw that there was a lot of conversation that was redacted, and he was able to stitch together to show these conversations when one cop doesn't have it redacted and the other cop does, but the cop that has it redacted is coincidentally talking about some of these things that he doesn't want to be heard, so he redacted. And so he was like, Reckless Ben he seems like a very smart individual. I'm not even gonna lie, half the shit that he was doing, I was like, what the fuck, you can do this? And he was like, what? That's fucking smart. And so he stitched together some of this audio that with one cop being redacted and the other isn't redacted. He's able to figure out what they're presumably talking about. And some of it was just like, they can't do anything about it, that what they're doing is legal, and that just basically things that doesn't help the cops. And so he called the police station or the department or whatever to speak with a lady that I presumably is the one that affects and determines what is redacted and is not redacted. And he confronts her like, hey, so we have footage that shows that you guys are redacting certain body cam footage and leaving some out, coincidentally to leave out certain conversations that can muddy the waters and could potentially hurt y'all. And she was like, no, we don't do that. It's just, we're just not allowed to do that. So the law says we can't do it, so we would never do it. And that's what I just told you, by the way, Ben, for you that keeps pushing with facts. I'm telling you now, Ben, that you're a liar and that we do it by the law and that we're not supposed to do anything besides what the law tells us. And so he reckless is just like, I have the footage right here. Like I have it's right here that it's true. And so it's super sad. I really do feel bad for this reckless Ben individual. Although, again, I think this is very good because on top of it all, this is just showing, this is giving publicity and a lot of public eye on one of the most corrupt situations I think I have seen. And it's crazy. Again, I reiterate that not even the hospice situation with the luring center situations and the fraud that's taking place with these daycares. I thought that would have been like the bigger like uncovering and exposing of government, fraud where they're just sending millions out to just help with whatever. And so I figured that was going to start the domino effect into exposing more. Not fucking Legos. That blew my mind. Legos is what's exposing fucking law enforcement corruption and just Mormons just being Mormons. Like, it was just such a funny thing how this exposes a lot of corruption, but not the hospice deal. That did less, I think, than this Lego situation. So I thought it was fucking crazy when I was watching the video. I don't even know if I finished the video. I was just so like, I gotta make a video now. That I just had to talk about it because this is fucking crazy to me. I've never thought in a million years that videos made about Lego and this Lego, like just basically Legos, a video about Legos is exposing corruption in law enforcement in Utah and, presumably links with that, including the Mormon church. And I thought that's fucking crazy to me. I hope something more comes out of it, more than just the blind eye and bias to Bricks and Minifigs and their CEO and their links. I hope that eventually it becomes too big of a public eye to where they have to go by the law, which is unfortunate that they have to do that that the only way that they can do it by the law is that there's enough eyes on it to be like, no, what you guys are doing is wrong and you guys have to do it by the law, because then too many eyes would get on it and people outside that are part of law enforcement or are part of this the judicial system are actually good people and not pieces of shit will get involved. So I hope that's what happens. I hope that Reckless Ben and the family that was involved get their money back and get their Legos back, because this is fucking crazy and I think that these people are assholes for doing it. So that's about it. Yeah, exposing corruption via Legos. I never thought I'd see the day. So that's about it. Talk to you guys later.